Let's talk some chess. Now that the World Championship is over, we can go back to just reviewing some sort of fun, less consequential, and less complicated games. This one is a game from 1999. Henrik Danielsen with the white pieces, Thomas Luther with the black pieces. The event was Peterm GM tournament. I'm going to link it below, but just a really fun game to watch. Features a really nice pawn storm, just pushing all the pawns, something I like to do with a lot of my games. Obviously not as well, but it's always super fun. So white opens up with f4, bird's opening, which is fun. Again, not played in really high level serious games anymore. d5 and knight to f3. And the bishop immediately jumps to g4, challenging that knight. White plays e3, supporting this pawn on f4, opening, creating a pin for the knight. The knight now cannot move because of the queen, but it's no problem. White can deal with this. Black plays knight to d7, and we have h3 kicking the bishop away from this pin. The bishop decides just to take instead of going into some h5 and then just being attacked again by the pawn. So the bishop takes the knight, and queen takes back on f3. Black brings his other knight to f6. We have g4, so already some nice expansion on the king side for white's pawns. Black plays e6, d3, and now bishop to b4 check. And this was the first mistake of the game for black. The correct move here is to play c6, just kind of protecting your pawns more in the center. Then after white develops the knight to d2, you have h6, protecting from this pawn storm, and the game would just continue normally. But instead, after bishop b4 check, you get this c3 move, obviously attacking the bishop, which now has to retreat. So the bishop retreats, but then you get e4, and now these pawns are connected. Well, of course they're connected, but they're coming in force, and you have to be careful with the black pieces. So d captures on e4, and now d captures back on e4, and now obviously you have to watch out for this e5 move, which would fork the bishop and the knight. So black stops it by playing e5 himself. We have g5, so these pawns are getting more and more dangerous. Now you're attacking the knight, and the knight doesn't have many good squares to go to, so it's forced to retreat all the way back to its home base to g8. That's literally the only square it can go to without being captured on the next turn. So not great for the black knight. So the black knight retreats to g8. We have f5. Now these two pawns are really cramping black style. h6 threatens to break it up, but instead we just have h4, adding support to this g5 pawn. So if black takes with the h pawn, then white can take right back and doesn't have to worry about the rook because the queen is nicely defending the rook. Black plays bishop to e7, trying to just get some forces aligned on these really difficult pawns. A better move here, unfortunately, this is a move that allows white, unfortunately for black, this is a move that allows white a really great attack. The better move here is e7, and then after something like rook to g1, black can castle kingside and get his king to safety. The problem with this bishop defense is that it's too slow, and it allows white to jump into the attack right away, which white does correctly with queen to h5. And now you're in some trouble because you have the queen, eyeing this f7 pawn. The pawn is now pinned, and you're going to need all the pawn support you can get with white's pawns bearing down on you. So black plays knight to b6. Not totally sure about this move, but I guess it frees up the queen on the d file, but not sure what that's really helping. The white bishop develops to h3. This comes with an attack on the knight, and now we bring the queen to d6. So I guess that's the idea behind the knight to b6 move. Knight to a3 by white, and then just c6 by black. Again, it's tough to find a good move here. One might think castling is good, but if you kind of castle, then you're going to get knight to b5, which attacks the queen and the pawn after you retreat your queen. This just looks like a much more fun position for black. This pawn is hanging with check. This pawn is hanging from the queen, and so not very fun. And instead of castling, if you play g6, so trying to kick away the queen, this is a slightly better move, but you get queen to f3, h6 on g5, and then d1. Now the rook is attacking the queen. There's a lot of pressure. This h file is going to open up, so this isn't good either. But I think it's better than what black did play, which is this c6 move. So just playing c6 because it allows a really nice combination from white. So white plays this knight to c4 move, and this might have been the idea behind knight to a3. And now obviously the knight is attacking the queen, which cannot be ignored. And the queen doesn't have that many safe spaces to go to, safe squares to go to. So, you know, nothing certainly that's in an advanced position. All of these squares are taken away, so the queen could either retreat, but black decides just to take the knight. So the knight exchanges knight on c4. And then we have white jumping right into it with the bishop, the final minor piece developing bishop to c4, and now you have a double attack on the f7 pawn. So now this is really concerning for black, and black just decides to get out of the way and castles kingside, but now the pressure is just going to be too much, as we will see. White has a nice little rook lift with h2, so allowing the rook to come over to the d file if needed, and just a nice sort of defensive move. Black plays queen to c7, getting out of the way of any of these, you know, rook to the d file ideas, and then white plays the move, which we probably expected a couple moves ago, which is bishop takes on f7. So, you know, now you've got these pawns in the vicinity. The bishop can come to e6 with check. The queen is teaming up with the bishop. The bishop's not even attacked. It's going to be very hard to knock this bishop out because black has no light squared bishop of his own. This knight is not really helping, and so this is just a really tough position to play, clearly, for black. Although white's king is still in the center of the board, so maybe there's some chance for a counterplay. Black finally takes the pawn on g5, but this is just, you know, basically black is trying to relieve the pressure a bit, and black says, okay, I'm going to sacrifice some material and hope to just relieve this insurmountable pressure. So it takes the pawn. This allows queen takes on h8, taking the rook. And in fairness to black, this rook wasn't doing anything, so in the current position, you know, maybe not the worst to trade a pawn for a rook. So queen takes rook, and then the knight is developed to h6, so able to activate the knight, whereas before the knight really couldn't move to any squares. So sacrificing a rook for an advanced pawn and developing the knight, and this also comes with the discovered attack of the rook on the queen. So the queen has to be careful here, but the queen just happily gobbles up the pawn on g7, and now you've created a passed pawn on f5 with a queen and bishop in support, and this is just going to be really difficult to stop. So here black plays knight to g4. This nice little move because it forks the rook and the bishop, but white, of course, does not care. So see if you can pause the for a second, take a minute and see if you can find the winning move here, the move that essentially puts the game out of question for white. Well, I give you a moment. Okay, so hopefully you just found, you know, the theme of this game has been pushing pawns and bearing down on black's position, and that's the answer here. The correct move here is f6. And this is an awesome move. You've just created this passed pawn, and now you're using it. You obviously, this comes with an attack on the bishop, and it was actually after this move that black resigned the game, and this was the end of the game. So let's think about, like, what is the threat and what's the idea here. Well, obviously you're threatening pawn takes bishop. So there's a couple things you can do. One thing you can do is take the pawn with the knight, right? I mean, the knight is defended by the bishop, so this seems like a proper move. That's okay. You've eliminated the passed pawn, and everything's okay. Not necessarily. So we've talked about this bishop to e6 check. You now play this, and there's not much you can do. You can move the king to b8, but then you're going to get the dark square bishop capturing on g5, and now you have these two bishops just completely controlling black's camp. So here, you know, you've got the knight is attacked twice by the bishop and the queen. Here, you know, black tries to get his queen out of harm's way, maybe get some, you know, counterplay going. But then you just get bishop captures, queen captures, and now white is just up a ton of material. White is up a bishop and a rook, and it has a nice pass pawn to go for it. So that won't work. So another thing maybe you can do after f6 is retreating the bishop. So, you know, retreat the bishop. This comes with an attack on the queen. The bishop is protected. So this seems like it'll work. But once again, this runs into bishop to e6 check. And obviously the check has to be dealt with, and the best move from the engine here is actually to block with the queen and just give up the queen. But let's see if we don't do that. If we don't do that and we move the king to b8, then now we just get the really nice bishop takes on a7 with check. And now the king has no real squares to go to. He has to take the bishop, but this leaves the queen hanging, and we just get queen takes queen, and now this is very much game. Again, white is just up a ton of material. So another thing you can do after f6 is taking the pawn with the bishop instead. So you take with the bishop, but then it's just the same old song and dance. This bishop to e6 check is just a really powerful move. Again, the king runs away, and now you can even take with the queen, and after the king takes back, you get bishop takes knight on g4, because this knight was not the piece that took on f6, so it's still there waiting to be taken. And again, you know, white is up a rook and a bishop, so that is game. So those are all like the obvious moves that come to mind. The actual best engine move is knight takes on e3, so taking the bishop, but this also doesn't work, and guess what? The move is here. It's bishop to e6 check, just as before. King retreats to b8, and then finally the pawn just takes the bishop sitting on f7. The rook tries to block the pawn, but then we get white creating another passed pawn with h takes on g5. The queen here just has to do its thing and take the pawn and eliminate this threat after a queen trade and rook takes. Then even king to d2, abandoning the bishop because it's fine, it doesn't matter, you can just take the knight. So after rook takes bishop, king takes knight, this is just insanely winning position where you have a pawn that's a couple squares away from queening, and you are up a rook, and even your king is in a better position. So just totally game over. So after this f6 move, black resigned, and just a really fun game where we see white expanding with the pawns on the queen side. We see a fun attack, and the perils of not sort of casting and getting out of the way early when the pawn storm is knocking on your door. So thanks for watching. Drop a like and a subscribe, and we'll see you next time.